Hey guys, sorry for the delay. This is Domain-04 organization management. Quite helpful because this is one key thing where you actually start your cloud journey. So let's start. This is the fourth domain out of the 12 domain organization management. So where exactly or what exactly we'll be learning out of that? The key objective for this one will be how you actually set up an organization. This is not the organization which I'm referring to as a company, but this is more towards when you start your cloud journey, how you actually define an organization. What will be the hierarchy? Are you going to use hybrid cloud or multi-cloud deployment? What will be the hierarchy in terms of you will be creating groups and all? And as you will be consuming a lot of services like SaaS, ISN, PaaS. So how they will be integrating, what will be the logic? So this is where you actually start your cloud footprint, developing organically, and let's say you have a merger, acquisition, consolidation. So this is the actual starting point. Okay, organization management. It's a key concept. So if you want to understand any organization, in even your own organization, you can think of a structure, a hierarchy in which you are organizing your resources. Similarly, in cloud, when I talk about organization, it's talking about the cloud resources, which you actually define in a hierarchy, in a structure that actually improves the security posture and they're easy to maintain. That's the key part. So, three terms which you see there: organization, which denotes the highest level of structure. Yes, the top of the cloud implementation. Then you talk about groups, which is a collection of deployments. And deployments will could be an isolated environment. This could be a hybrid cloud, a multi-cloud. That means you are using a single cloud provider, or maybe you are using multiple cloud provider. Maybe you are using an on-prem system or in a cloud system, which is working together. So, but different uh, cloud providers use different terms. So that is very key, and hence I have added these two figures. So if you see AWS, they call it organization. GCP also calls organization, but Microsoft calls it tenant. Hence, when you go to groups, AWS called is organization units, while GCP calls folder, and Microsoft calls is resource group. Similarly, for deployment, it's called account in AWS and projects in GCP and subscription to Microsoft Azure. So the key is not about remembering these words, but the key is you have to understand what does organization, group, and deployment helps you, and this is what we are going to understand and uh, you know uh, plan way ahead when you do our first deployment. So the next concept you have to remember is why you need an organization, apart from creating a hierarchy, or what does hierarchy provide you. So the simple thing is there's a segmentation and segregation within the organization. Segmentation, that means you are putting different resources at different location. Let's say the network resources or the first tier is in different group. Then you have separate groups for application, maybe database and all that. But why would you need that? Or even within the network, why would you need actually resources which are external, which are internal? This is more to to have or create a blast radius. Remember this keyword called blast radius, which is like the possibility in case something happens, the impact should be reduced or minimal. Okay, that's the key thing. Now, coming back to what are the four capabilities that a major CSP will provide you, they actually provide you with a group that allows a customer to structure their deployments into an isolation hierarchy. Then they define you policies, and wherein the policies will be enabling and disabling features like often define your API and even their parameters. Then IAM, which is the key thing, it is the centralized IAM or a federation services which you use for your authentication, authorization. Okay. On top of that, CSP uh, have to define their shared security services. Okay. When I say about that, the key one is a central login service. So while you have different groups created, but you definitely want a centralized logging for all these devices so that your SOC or your managed SOC provider can actually analyze and provide you with a guidance. Okay. So this is the key things you must remember. Okay. So when you are building any hierarchy in a provider, there are definitely three models. When I say model means what will be your key decision making when performing or creating a hierarchy. So the first one is the business unit and application base. What does it means is your business comes first and then your application. That means you have created one single organization, then you have created a business unit, let's say HR, and within HR you are defining all the application or their own resources. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is environmental based. When I say environmental based means you have deployment, you have dev, you have production, you have non-prod, you have performance, load testing. So all these environments you can actually create, and that could be within a business or it can be outside of the business. You have to design and define on your requirement whether you want to define environment first, then you define the business, then followed by the application, or you want to do the other way. Then comes in geographically based. That means, let's say you have a very huge organization which is sprawling against many places. Okay. Now, this is where you start with. So, you create a organization which is comprising of your entire account, but then you have geography based. That means you have something in EMEA, maybe North America, then Asia Pacific, and then from there on you define businesses, and within businesses you can define application. So all you have to understand what will be your hierarchy. Again, the easy or the best way is to combine or join them together is through an organization, and that's what we are trying to emphasize here. So the three things which I mentioned about the hierarchy or the models, and that's something keep in your mind whenever you go for any kind of discussion. Thanks. So, when we talk about organization level security, we are referring to the controls we are going to set up for an organization on a group level and how we are going to do that. So, before that, always understand there is nothing called as no risk. There is always a risk. But our role as a security professional is to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. Hence, we can benefit to the business. Okay, that's the key thing. So always remember there is nothing called as zero risk. There is risk, but we have to maintain at the acceptable level. Okay. Now, when we talk about how to manage this risk, okay, then the key things you have to understand that always use the principle of least privilege. Okay. So what we are trying to say is on the highest level, there are two important factors. First, always limit your root access, you know, uh, because they are the one who can perform any kind of task, and hence these root level access should be given to limited people. Okay, and also the privilege escalation as a normal user to a root user should be monitored correctly. That's one thing. Okay, second thing, whenever you are defining the operations team or any team which is monitoring or as an auditor, you have to understand what and resources they can access, they can create. Do they have access to all your environment, let's say development, your production, non-production? Okay. Does they are capable of creating an account? Can they delete an account? So what kind of action they can perform? This is the second important thing you have to understand. Now, how a cloud service providers actually handle this? So the best way, or any cloud provider has done it, is to define policies. That means CSP allows you to define policies at three levels. One is the organization wide level, which is actually implemented to all. That means this policy, let's say, all your resources will be created in Singapore. So that is one of the policy within the organization. So that means you are already restricting the geolocation, but this one is applicable to all. Now goes to the group level. When I say group level, this could be to an example like HR or your payroll, okay, or maybe let's say legal. So what you are trying to define here within HR, who has and what are the resources, who can access them, who can create them. Always have the concept of making a maker and checker. So you can actually perform a policy or you can define a policy on the group level. Okay. This is most commonly used policy for your application. And so be very, familiar about it. Okay. And this is what it differentiates between the other groups. Okay. Now, coming to the last one, which talks about deployment level policy, these are for individual deployments. When I say individual deployments, means application. Let's say you have an application for payroll, okay? Then this payroll application is going to access what kind of resources, what access it will have to the proxy server, to an external domain, if it is a SaaS application, how it's going to store the database. So all this comes to the granular level. So always understand whenever anybody is talking about how you define controls or how you define, security within a cloud, there are three things in which is provided by all service providers, which is organization wide, group level, deployment level. Okay. Now, somebody, if in general is somebody is asking what is a use of a policy, the simple thing is a policy is used in various scenarios, maybe enabling and disabling services, blocking APIs, planning for your regions, deploying or performing any kind of restriction within that. So keep in mind these kinds are very important, and and do keep note of the three level which where you can define the policies. Thank you. Okay. So this slide is quite important because as a security professional, this will actually give you some guidelines or give you some idea how a service provider actually try to push or put all your security tools at one location and what is the reason. Okay. So while you're defining all your, organization and all that, your service provider is definitely trying to emphasize on shared services and why we need that. So even if I take an example for AWS, AWS has IAM service, which is a global service. Okay. With that global service, that means you don't define users only in Singapore. So when you define it, you define it on a global level. Okay. Now, why is the reason? The question is why you actually have to even look forward or have to have this kind of setup. Okay. So the basic thing is again to consolidate some of the services which are very common. That's one thing. On top of that, these services are interrelated, used by all, common to all. So let's say you have an HR department, you have legal department, you have an IT department. If you understand, they all have to go through IAM. That means they all need to have users created. Okay. Hence, you see from that perspective. Okay. And even you can have, again, as I said, you can have policies where you can define who can manage the users and all. Okay. The second important thing is centralized logging and monitoring. So why you need that? So you need a telemetry to understand. That means you're getting feeds, but these feeds are common. Let's say I'm subscribed to a feed which gives me threat info. Okay. Do what I need to do is this has to be shared, and specifically this is something which anybody can refer, so it becomes a shared service or common service. Okay. The third one could be a threat detection service. Okay, you have a threat. Let's say you have a DDoS attack going on from any location. Okay, and with this, actually, you want to understand what and how it is impacting my department or any other department. So again, these things are very common and has to be centralized. Now, what benefit it gets you? It gets you a major cost benefit. That means when you are defining a cost, what you need to do is you can actually monitor your services or your resources centrally. All you need to do is you have to tag your resources. Let's say you have similar resource, let's say a VPC or a EC2 instance. What you can do is you can tag it to HR, and then you can create one for legal, and then you can tag it legal. This way, the relevant resources are created, they are being used, they are being monitored, they are making use of the shared services. At the same time, it's easy for the billing to be performed. Okay. So uh, do note that there will be additional material which will be coming in domain 6 and 7. So I will be covering to that part. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So this slide is kind of very important, and I've always seen people getting confused. What is a hybrid cloud? What is a multi-cloud deployment? So as you know, there is uh, the IT is quite diverse. Okay, the landscape is quite diverse. That means you have different requirements for application, for IT people, for security teams. Okay, so what happens is you can have a implementation which is both again as a hybrid. When I say hybrid means you have a cloud deployment which connects your on-prem data center with a public cloud service that provides you flexibility and scalability. To give an example, you have your on-premise servers which you want to back up, but you don't have a location right now. You can actually leverage on a cloud service provider to save your backup. To give an example, recently you have an iPhone, which is your own device, but then you are using Apple Cloud services to back it up. Okay. Multi cloud, on the other hand, is talking about uh, you are connecting two cloud service providers, maybe Azure and AWS. The reason could be either of them is providing one kind of a service which has got more features or something which you are looking for, also to avoid any kind of vendor lock-in, to optimize the performance. Okay, so I say you have, as I said, you have an application which is by one of the service provider and it is really good. It is highly optimized. Your users are more used to it, and then that is where you actually can leverage on a multi-cloud environment. Okay. Moving forward, whenever you are performing any integration, there are basic tools like you have virtual private networks, you have dedicated network link. There could be different names, but remember the word VPN. Okay, so there is site to site VPN. That's what I'm referring to. I'm not talking about your general VPN where you connect from your laptop to your home, to your office. Okay, but I'm talking about two cloud service providers. They are connected through VPN through the public network. You can also have a dedicated network link depending upon the cost. It all is decisive. Okay, which one you want to go for. Okay, to have a strong, I would say a strong security posture when you're connecting in a hybrid cloud, you have to make use of both the service providers. Okay, and then you have to define the policies. You have to weigh their weaknesses, their strength. The benefit you get is you're isolating, you're compartmentalizing so that you can avoid vulnerability on two different environments. So, whenever you think about either you think about hybrid or multi cloud, especially for hybrid, you have to understand how will be your IAM, identity and access management. Okay, who will be your identity provider, who will be managing it, how it will be providing access. It's very crucial. Similarly, network security, you have to understand what is your blast radius, how you are doing the segmentation, how you are doing, segregation of the network in order to protect your um, cloud assets from threats. So, kind of very important slide for me, I would say. Do note there could be, questions about it. What is a hybrid cloud, what is a multi-cloud, and in your uh, keep keep back of your mind what are they and how they are being set up. Thanks. Okay, another key concept, the consideration about multi-cloud security. So when I as I shared previously, multi-cloud means you are using two different clouds to set up your environment, so to operate. Looks very straightforward, looks very easy, but you have to strategize. You have to understand whether I am ready for any kind of implementation which host my environment to two different service provider, two or three different service providers. Okay, it requires a lot of maturity in your existing cloud setup. Once you are mature enough, then only you should think moving your services or exploring other services from other cloud service providers. Okay, why I say that? Fundamentally, all the CSP are different. Okay, when I say different is they have a different characteristics, the way they handle different services. Let's say identity and access management or networks, different naming convention, different name types. They actually have unique characteristics. So you have to have a clear understanding how much you understand about it and how well you can combine and get the best outcome of that. Okay, so understand these are not straightforward, quite difficult. you can make use of three strategies. Okay, you can actually start with single provider, where actually organization uses a single provider for their deployment, and maybe it could be a merger acquisition, and then they they either migrate all the resources to the primary one, and then they stick to the primary or a single provider. Okay, that's one way of doing it. This is where actually you have to consider uh, how the two organizations were set up. Let's say you are doing a merger, okay, and then you make a call that maybe the current resources are in Azure and I want to migrate them to AWS or vice versa. That's one way. Then comes in primary and secondary. Primary, when I say all the new deployments, everything goes into the primary CSP, which is referred to your main cloud as a footprint. Okay, you use the secondary uh, or secondary cloud service provider depending on the need. Okay, again, it boils down to whether you have a merger and acquisition, but you have to ensure that the secondary CSP is also tightly locked down. Okay, and comes in full multi support. All of them are equally supportive. They have equal balance. It could be a 50-50. Nothing wrong. You can actually go for it. The only thing you have, the catch is your applications, which comes to my next point. There is kind of a misconception about people that containers can be very straightforward to manage. Within, let's say, your application is containerized, hence you can actually just migrate them over. No, it requires strategy. It requires strategy, what tools you are using, what deployments you are doing, what how you're going to migrate over your containers, how you're going to migrate your workload. Okay, so all those things have to be understood. The cost, the dynamics of the cost, because you're moving from one to another, there is a data which is going out, then you have to pay for that again. So what I'm trying to say is not to have a consideration about multi-cloud security, but while doing your multi-cloud strategy or planning for the security, you have to understand what will be your strategy, how you're going to do it, single provider, primary and secondary, or full multi-cloud. Okay, so again, another thing, what I have seen is whenever you are doing any kind of a transition, we are heavily, or we are worried about the resources. Okay, whether I have right resources, and that's something which always comes up in decision making. Let's say I have people who are supportive or very well versed with AWS, and that could be one of the reason I don't want to move to Azure. But the point is, fundamentally there are differences, but the things are quite common as well. So it takes time. But again, this is something which is debatable, that goes how you want to design it. But again, focus only on the three strategy: single provider, primary, secondary, or full multi-cloud support. Okay, moving to the last concept, the SaaS offering and how does it work for your hybrid and multi-cloud environment. So always understand that whenever you're talking about SaaS for a CSP, it's more towards you are enhancing your current operation and innovation. Example, Office 365. Okay, but they are not like infrastructure as a service, so it's quite different. SaaS usually nowadays provides a diverse offering, and you need to have uh, different security maturity for handling that, because it's actually managing or handling your own data. So you have to be very clear what kind of data is being processed and how it is being stored, where it is being stored. So SaaS is a very common, and but it's again, it depends how you actually define the security and compliance for that one. Okay. Again, then you should have something as a central repository where you are actually managing what are your SaaS offerings, or kind of a catalog. Okay. So the first thing you have to understand is how a SaaS application is being used, how it is being integrated in your current environment, what are the applications, what is the data flow, and what is the governance currently on top of that. Okay, so this is the key. Why we are emphasizing on SaaS? Because in SaaS you have very less control. It is something which is being patched, built, everything by the service provider. You are just consuming the service, and then you have a very little control on the application itself. Hence, you have to be very clear in terms of security and compliance. Now, there could be, or there are three tools which I mentioned in the study guide, which can help you to manage multiple SaaS within CSP. Okay. So the first one is federated identity broker, definitely a unified place where you can manage and you can define your identity whenever you're coming in, what are the permission, what the life cycle, uh, what they can perform. Similarly, like your identity and access management, but the word is federated identity brokers. The second term is very important. This is something you will definitely hear, CASB, so Cloud Access and Security Brokers. This is very useful when you're managing a portfolio, a SaaS portfolio. This could be a central pane of glass where you are logging in. Then it defines what applications a certain user has access to, what it can perform, and all that. Kind of very important term. Then you have API gateways. Definitely, most of them are actually API based. So all these SaaS applications, do they have an API? How, let's say you're using two different cloud service provider, how the data is going to flow, what will be the APIs being used, how they're configured, are the APIs safe and secure, do we have any policies to govern those. So all in all, you have to take these three tools, keep in your mind. CASB is one of the most important one, I would say. API is more on the technical front, but as a security professional, you might be asked to endorse any kind of a solution. Federated identity brokers, definitely. I've myself have not seen any uh, direct implementation of that. CASB, yes, I've done that. API gateways is kind of very basic and to start with. So all in all, yes, organization management gives you how you actually going to manage your environment or your organization. It is kind of your first footprint in the cloud. And on top of that, how things will be. That means when you define your actual organization and translate into a cloud organization. So there will be some sort of a mapping. Okay. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for the delay for this video. I will try to put the other video soon. Thanks a lot. Okay. I want to thank you again. So like and subscribe the channel, and I will be adding more videos soon. Thanks a lot.